Hi,
Hi.
everybody. Thank you so much for your patience tonight. We seem to have had nothing but technical problems, and so I tried to transfer everybody who's over on the other Hangout over to here. I hope you've made it. Um, we're so excited that you're here tonight, and we want to welcome you to our second Google Hangout, where we're going to be talking about crisis management plans. Athena, you've been so patient tonight. How are you doing?
I think I'm fine, although I can't tell if it's not the software is not um, it's not functioning the way that it functioned last week. Last week when I would speak, my picture would pop up so that I would know that I was speaking or that I could be heard, and now I'm just down in the corner. I don't know what's going on. But hey, you know what? This is live, and I just want to welcome everyone. If you are tuning in to the No More Shame Project live Google Hangout regarding preparing a crisis management plan, you are in the right place. I want to welcome any of our listeners that could be hearing us for the first time on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud, or if you have found us on Twitter or Facebook, or if you are on our website or on YouTube and you just found
Yeah.
us and it's 3 in the morning, 3 months from today's date, then we just want to welcome you and tell you that this is a safe place, and we obviously never arrive and we don't know what we're doing sometimes. And when we were in the green room, I was telling Bobby that I need a crisis management plan for this particular situation that we're in right now,
Absolutely.
because I feel completely out of control. It's not, the software is not behaving the way that it behaved last week. It's as though they changed our entire interface. Google has changed everything, and it's not functioning the way that it did last week. So no clue if this is going to render over to YouTube or if you're going to be hearing this on iTunes or Stitcher. But welcome, and we're really excited that you're here. And we have a fancy download for you that you can download right over here on the Google Hangout
Yeah.
or on our website.
Yeah, hang
So,
on here just a minute. This is what we're going to talk about tonight. Let me screen share with you. Here we go. Start screen share. Do you see it, Athena?
not yet, but oh, I see part of it. It's like, it's kind of like cut off halfway.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
when I'm moving it, can you see it?
Yeah. Hey,
Okay.
if any of you are listening right now and you're curious about the download that we are talking about, we have a crisis management plan one page, and it is just one of our downloadables that we are going to be offering for survivors of sexual abuse. And you can find this download at http:// www.nomoreshameproject.com/downloadables. And there will be a link there that says Crisis Management Plan, one page. And if you click that, you can follow along with our conversation. There are some really great tips, and there's even at the bottom an area for you to create your own crisis management plan, which
Yeah.
I feel is completely necessary. I've had a day. It started super early, and I have needed a crisis management plan this entire day, and maybe it's just perfect timing so that this broadcast would be raw and real and vulnerable or something, but I would
Yeah.
be just as happy if I was having a completely normal day and didn't need the crisis management plan. So hopefully this is we don't even know if this is being recorded. Like, we have no idea if you're even going to be hearing this. So let's just jump right into the content and hope for the best. How
You
about
bet.
that?
And we will have a one page for every Google Hangout that we do. So at
Yeah.
any time, if you want to go in and take a look at what we've done, our goal is to give you a one page summary of a different topic every week. And all of them will be on our website. And so anytime that you need some information, you want just a real quick um, reference to what we're talking about, that is the
Yeah.
place to go. So let's look at crisis management plans. The reason that we do a crisis management plan is because trauma, unfortunately, is not a linear recovery process. Um, when we are triggered, when we're stressed, our mood can tend to bottom out. Sometimes our PTSD gets really bad, and it starts to feel like a crisis. And so unfortunately, when you start to get low, when your PTSD is bad, then you feel bad because you feel guilty or you feel ashamed, that you feel like you're stepping backwards. And then of course that makes you feel worse. So it's a vicious cycle that feeds itself. And it's pretty easy for a survivor, if they don't get the brakes put on, to slide all the way down into a complete meltdown and crisis.
Hey, Bobby, I wanted to mention something to our listeners and viewers. All this that we're talking about right now, if you're brand new to our community and you're not familiar with the vernacular that we're using, so this is all basically predicated upon the the thought that you, as a survivor, are either diagnosed or undiagnosed struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And we will have an entirely other hangout to find out if that's something that you struggle with. And perhaps you're thinking, well, I never fought in Vietnam. I wasn't in the Gulf War. Like, I'm not a soldier. I don't have. I've never heard of anybody talking about PTSD for this type of situation. Well, we desire to educate you and to share with you truths about your survival and recovery journey. And one of those truths is you could be, and we're not like doomsdayers or anything saying you have PTSD, like diagnosing you over a Google Hangout or over a podcast on iTunes, but we are assuming that when we are sharing this information with you, that there is a possibility or a reality that you could be struggling with PTSD symptoms. So I just wanted to preface that this conversation with that knowledge, in case someone that's listening in has never even perhaps thought that they might be struggling with something like that. They just thought that they were stressed out their whole life, or they had anger problems, or they have generalized anxiety disorder, or they've been labeled overly emotional. I mean, there's a chance that you could be struggling with PTSD. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think that's great, because one of the things that Athena and I have done is we have done so much research on trauma and how it affects people.
Yeah.
And we have so much experience, both as survivors ourselves and as trauma recovery coaches. And one of the things that we've done is we have put together a trauma response model. And in our model, trauma is defined as something that evokes fear, it changes your view of yourself, and it changes your view of the world. So anything that does any of those is a definition of something that's traumatic. So you don't have, like Athena's saying, you don't have to be a soldier. You don't even have to have perhaps been in a horrible car accident. Maybe you have experienced child abuse. Maybe your mother died when you were young. Your parents divorced. Any of those things can cause trauma, and as a result, you could have PTSD.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at this. The reason, again, that we set up a crisis management plan is to help us identify when we're heading into a crisis so we can intervene and stop it. And you would write this crisis management plan either on your own, with a safe family member, and we recognize that not all family members are safe people, or perhaps with your therapist or caseworker.
Yeah.
And there are three components, three stages to a crisis management plan. And they're down there on the bottom, and they talk about, the first one is when you're approaching a crisis. And the second one is when you're starting to spiral downward. And the last one is when you're in full-blown crisis mode.
So maybe we can pull that apart a little bit and just share with our listeners and viewers exactly what it looks like in real time of an example of approaching crisis, spiraling downward, and full-blown crisis. And I am completely fine. We discussed this off the air. I am completely fine if we use my situation this morning as an example, just so I can wrap my head around this whole thing and perhaps give people an illustration that they can apply to their own lives.
Absolutely.
So sometimes we don't even know we are approaching a crisis. Is that
No,
true?
that is true. And that's
Yeah.
an important part of a crisis management plan is to begin to know, identify in yourself, what am I feeling? Um, what, what is happening in my body? What's happening in my head that lets me know that I'm approaching that? So what happened for you this morning, Athena?
Well, what happened was I was just doing my normal morning routine, and part of my normal morning routine is getting a whole bunch of different things ready for my husband to start his work day. And I work from home. I love working from home. My husband, however, drives about 20 minutes into work each day, and I love to wake up first. So I'm the person who wakes up in the 5 o'clock hour normally. I love to make the coffee and get everything all set up. I love to make his lunch and make his smoothie, and we each are really into taking vitamin supplements. We don't really ever have to go to the doctor or struggle with a lot of illnesses or anything. I think it's because we're really trying to practice organic or sort of naturopathic health or whatever. Um, so I usually have his vitamins completely ready, all the different vitamins, his smoothie, and his lunch before he leaves to get ready to go out the door to go to work. And um, for some reason, we just spent a little bit of extra time and quiet time this morning. So our morning was already running just a little bit later or behind schedule than we had anticipated. So we were outside on our lanai, and we have quiet time and prayer time, and we read a proverb every day and just discuss, our one another's prayer needs, and that's just something that it's a discipline that we absolutely love about our marriage. So after that, I came inside to start doing all of the stuff. Well, he all of a sudden was just ready, and he was ready to walk out the door. So he walked up thinking, I think he was thinking, I ended up talking to him later on, but after this whole thing happened and I was approaching crisis and didn't know it. Um, and I know this all sounds like super funny and whatever, but in the moment, it is literally a crisis, you guys. Like, I hope that you know that I'm completely in recovery with you, and this is 100% real, and I was approaching meltdown. So just to lay it out for you, my husband walks up. He's getting ready to walk down the stairs to leave to go to work and say goodbye to me, but the vitamins aren't ready, and the lunch isn't out and packed, and the smoothie's not done, and all of a sudden he's in a little bit of a rush, and he has these sort of rushed movements where he's like, well, I'll just get my vitamins while you make the smoothie, and blah, 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 blah. And we started just sort of communicating through how we needed to hurry and get him off the door so he could get a good parking spot, because Lahaina, Hawaii, tourist town, no parking. So something happened, and I have to just share this transparently and vulnerably with you, our listeners and viewers. Something about my childhood. Now, I personally do struggle with complex PTSD. I am not on medication for that. I have chosen to not go on medication, but there is always that choice open for me should this become debilitating. So a choice that I have made is to not be on medication as of yet. The hurried movements that my husband was making were completely innocent and normal of a person that was like, I got to get a parking spot in front of my workplace.
Right.
But for some reason, my not being ready, or not having my ducks in a row, or not having everything done that I had expected of myself, or something like that, it had some sort of a trigger, and then his hurried movements were way too familiar for me. I grew up in an extremely, oftentimes violent environment where if there was a rushed or hurried movement, there was often physical abuse involved, and it was out of nowhere. It would be completely out of left field and surprising, but I incurred a lot of physical abuse as a child. And so these hurried, rushed movements that my husband makes sometimes innocently, just trying to get a parking spot. Somehow in my mind, I had a PTSD moment and didn't even know that that's what was happening. I was just going, oh, well, I'll just hurry and make the smoothie. And I thought that I was fine. And then for some reason, he asked me some question about salad dressing on the salad. And I felt like I was going to just melt down and cry. And I don't know. I know that I'm not the only person in the world that has ever experienced this, but to go on live internet television on Google Plus Hangout and have you listen to it on iTunes, like, I don't know if you know how vulnerable that is, but this is a really vulnerable place for me, but I just need you to know the reason that I'm talking about this is because you are not alone. And I needed a crisis management plan at that moment, and I did not have one written down. So this Google Hangout, this podcast is perfect timing for me in my life. And I reached out to Bobby. I texted her immediately and said, I'm approaching a meltdown. Would you like to start our business meeting, which we have every Wednesday, a few minutes early? So enters Bobby on a white horse, riding in with shining armor, with a crisis management plan for me. And I just got to tell you that it makes all the difference in the world when you have that person that's a safe person to reach out to.
Absolutely.
So I look forward to sharing the end of the story with you after we talk about the crisis management plan, in case you're just not really interested in what's going on with my life and you want some real content. We're giving you content right now. So we'll put some show notes in to like fast forward to this amount or this moment in the hangout or the podcast so that you can get the content you need. So Bobby, that is my version of what happened this morning. Was that approaching crisis? Was that spiraling downward, or was that full-blown crisis? And how can I see it, stop it, change it, which is Absolutely. What it is that we like to teach our survivors. See it, Stop it, change it.
Right. See what's going on. See something that's happening that maybe is not a healthy thing or a good thing. Stop that thing and change it to something that's healthy.
Yeah.
At that point, for me as a therapist and a coach, when I talk to someone about being in full-blown crisis, I usually think of someone who is suicidal. Their PTSD is so present, so severe at that time that they are completely in fight or flight mode, or they're so depressed that they are not functioning. They're not functioning in their daily lives, or their anxiety is so high that, again, they're just not functioning. So I know that I think probably initially in the morning, and I think sometimes we've talked about how we're not aware of stress in our life, and we need to become more aware as it grows and recognize, because for me, stress is a trigger. So for me, when I fill out my crisis management plan and for approaching crisis, one of my triggers is increased stress, because that makes me vulnerable.
Would that be one of your identifiers?
No, that would be one of my triggers. An identifier is, how do we know that we have been triggered and that we are approaching crisis?
Oh, I have when I reformatted the document that you gave me for the download, which I will fix, guys. I'll fix it by the time you guys see it, hopefully, when you're listening in and you go to download it. The word triggers on the download to the right of the word crisis should be down underneath, or right above the word identifiers.
See how it is on stage 3? That's the way it should look.
Exactly. Right. Okay.
So when we're approaching crisis, like for me, the example I gave is that one of my triggers is a lack of sleep.
Okay.
My depression will go to heck in a handbasket very quickly if I don't get enough sleep. And so for me, that's a trigger. And then one of my identifiers is my hair trigger, anger. And for me, when I get angry, I cry. I don't yell, I don't scream, I just internalize everything and I just cry. So things that wouldn't usually upset me, like a traffic jam, will leave me sitting in my car just bawling uncontrollably because I'm so frustrated and angry. And that's how I know that I'm approaching crisis. And so then I have to have some solutions. And what would be a solution for me would be getting some extra sleep, cutting down on my stress, starting to say no to projects, or letting people know I'm not going to meet a deadline. I need a few extra days. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. So, would you say that the situation that I described for you, um, would you say that the hurried movements were a trigger?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Was the running, I feel like the running behind schedule
It's
was a little
also
bit of a trigger also
it,
for
you
me.
you can have multiple triggers, and yes, definitely
Okay.
that because
Okay.
I think for you in that situation, running behind triggered for you a feeling of not being worthy.
Yeah.
I'm
Like,
not doing what I should be. I'm behind. I'm not good enough. I'm doing
yeah.
something wrong. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I can definitely see how. And again, that's just I mean, obviously, rationally, in my rational adult, practical thinking mind, I'm not thinking, well, gosh, there's something wrong with me because I didn't make a smoothie on time. Like,
Exactly.
but when you're in anyone here who's listening in or watching on YouTube or on Google right now, if you are a person that is familiar with any type of mental health jargon, um, anything PTSD related, it's amplified. There's a lot of confusion. There's a feeling of overwhelmedness. There are just very um, it's a stark contrast between reality and like where you're at that moment. If
Right.
you had a family member that had just come back from Iraq and you lived in an urban neighborhood and there was a car that drove by and backfired, you wouldn't necessarily think that something was wrong with your family member and that they're crazy and that something's wrong with them and it's all their
Right.
fault that they're freaked out that the car backfired, because in that moment they're not going, oh, the car backfired outside, I'm
Right.
home. They honestly think that they are back in that place where they survived that trauma or struggled with that trauma.
Absolutely. It's not, PTSD is not a rational disorder. It's not about rationality. It's about being triggered, and that trigger is so powerful. It's so powerfully embedded in your brain that you automatically go to that fight or flight spot. And so for
Yeah,
you, when someone is rushing around you and creating that hurried movement, that for you is a trigger that tells you, I'm going to get hurt. Something violent is coming. I know it's
yeah,
coming. And I'm going to get hurt. And you were already in a vulnerable place because you felt you weren't worthy, because you were behind in the schedule. And I can
yeah.
only imagine, sweetie, that when you were a child, I bet that you never did anything that was considered to be good enough. You were never good enough. It didn't matter what you did, you weren't good enough for your mom, for your dad, for anybody. And
I
especially
I
when you were
think
behind.
Yeah, I think for me is the triggered feeling that I'm identifying right now isn't necessarily that I was never, nothing I ever did was good enough for my mom or for my dad or my stepdad or stepsisters or whoever it might have been. I think the deeper feeling that I get is
Mm-hmm.
that um, it's so hard for me to describe. Not that nothing I ever do is good enough. That's almost not like completely accurate. I think it's more um, like almost like I'm like a nuisance, or
Oh, okay.
like
You're a bother, you're an
I'm
annoyance.
I'm an annoyance. I'm a bother. I'm a like get out of the way. I'll do it. Like
Right,
just forget it. I'll do that. Forget it. Like you can't do that right, so I'll
right.
just do it.
I can really
And
see that.
yeah, so I think that's like it's like it's not accurate to say that nothing I ever did was good enough. It was I had a deep feeling from a very young age that I was a nuisance and that I was a bother and that I took a lot of effort. Like, if it wasn't for me, blank, 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 fill in the blank.
Right, right.
So I think when I was in that moment this morning and I was I was honestly struggling with, well, you know, because what my husband will do in a very well-meaning way is he will help me. If I'm in the middle of making him something, he'll like clean up the counter next to me or he'll, whatever. But I'm somehow receiving that in the middle of my post-traumatic stress
Moment, right?
moment. I'm receiving that as you are such a bother. Let me just do that for you
Exactly.
because
Get out of the way
obviously,
because you can't do it right.
yeah. And the neatest thing happened. So now that I understand that that was a trigger, and then we'll move on to identifiers, and then the third step. Um, so when I ended up calling my husband after our business meeting and just sharing with him, hey, I just had to call you and tell you, thank you so much for being so patient with me this morning and for your kindness and for your understanding. And I didn't realize that your hurried movements really triggered me. And I felt extremely, um, I was just approaching a meltdown, like a post-traumatic meltdown.
Right.
And he said, I had a feeling that might have been what was going on. I I could tell something was going on with you, and that's why
Uh-huh.
I just stood there for a moment. He said, because I could tell that it was not you.
Right.
So I
Right.
thought, wow, we've come so far. Like it's only been 3.5 years since we got married, and here he is, like finally after all this communication and like me explaining to him, honey, like this is something that I struggle with. This isn't just make believe. This isn't, oh, well, just forget about that. That's in the past. Like, just move on. That was like 30 years ago. Why don't you? Like, that's not really a reality when it's something that was completely traumatic and you weren't even sure you were going to live through it, like
Exactly.
at the time. So it was neat that we were able to resolve that. And I just said, will you please accept my apology for just the way I acted so irrationally, for just what was going on in the moment. And he's like, absolutely, I receive your apology. Like, I just knew that something must have been going on, that you must have been struggling at that moment. It's okay. So I'm just grateful that that's how it went down, because it's not always a pretty thing when you have a post-traumatic stress moment, especially if you really don't know that that's what's going on at the moment. You really
Exactly.
feel overwhelmed, like you're flooding, like
Yeah.
Gottman says, like flooding, like the whole
Right.
moment is flooded.
Right. But I think what's neat about that, Athena, is that then that moves your husband into a role of being part of your solution
Yeah,
because you experienced your trigger. You didn't quite have your identifiers down, so you weren't quite sure how to know that you were having a PTSD moment. But once you get those identifiers down, now one of your solutions can be, wait a minute, Jim, I'm sorry. I think my PTSD is flaring up. Can you just help me sort this out for a minute? Can we both just stop and just talk for a minute about what's going on?
yeah,
Because he's told you now, I'm kind of starting to understand when that happens for you. And he's
yeah,
obviously, when you talk to him about it, he's established himself as a safe place to talk. And so
yeah.
now he can
He's
become
a
part
safe
of the
place.
solution. Exactly. He can be good. And not every person who has PTSD is married to a person who is a safe person. So we have to
This is
acknowledge
true.
that.
This
I've
is
been there, done
very,
that. Been there,
very
done that.
true.
Yes,
Very true.
right. But your husband is. And so now he can be part of your solution. And he can be part of your solution, I think, for every one of your three stages. Um, and as he
So So
learns,
what were my identifiers, if I can just ask you? So
yeah,
was my because what happened was he went out the door and got in his car, and he got a parking spot right out in front of his work, by the way. It all just
good.
worked out. It was just awesome. So it was just great. It worked out. But I then texted you and said, I'm ready a few minutes early for our business meeting. I'm approaching a meltdown.
Right.
because I didn't want to interrupt our business time that we needed. Um, was the identifier, because I think the exact words I texted you were, I'm not exactly sure why.
Yeah.
I don't, I could tell something was triggering me at that moment. Like when I was standing, okay, I was standing at the sink and I was finishing what I was doing, and I could feel myself almost like I felt like I was going to start crying.
Yeah.
And that was when I knew this is not a normal response.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
I'm making a smoothie on a Wednesday. Like what in my house. Like
Right.
it's 8:30 in the morning. Like I just got done having amazing coffee and watching the palm trees sway and looking at the ocean. Like I knew at that moment when I felt like, why am I so upset right now? Is that what you call an identifier when you realize that it's not the moment you're in, that it must be something else? Is that an identifier?
I think the identifier for you would be I feel like crying in a situation that's really not appropriate. Not appropriate, it's not the right word, but I feel like crying in a situation which I would
That
not normally
doesn't
feel like
warrant
crying.
crying.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Or because I'll do that too, but um, or when you just started to maybe you feel your shoulders tense, or maybe you feel yourself drawing in. Um, when your thoughts in your mind start to swirl instead of being, ordered and regular, when your emotions start to overwhelm you, um, I think those would be identifiers for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I think it does make sense, and I think I understand better the difference between a trigger and an identifier.
Right.
And then you mentioned a moment ago that my husband was actually part of a solution. What else would be considered part of a solution?
Okay. Well, for me, like I said, when I don't get sleep, or sometimes it's not sleep, but when I feel my depression start to get bad, um,
Uh-huh.
because I have depression and I have the complex PTSD. So when I feel my depression start to worsen, for me, a solution is always sleep. Always
Okay.
for sleep. Always. Um,
Okay.
a solution for me is also reaching out to my support people, letting them know, hey, I need a little extra support because I feel like my depression is getting away from me. Um,
Yeah.
it might be good self-care. Maybe I need to sit down for half an hour with a cup of tea. Maybe I need to take a bubble bath. Maybe I need to rearrange my schedule so I can just sit in front of the television and watch silly movies. Whatever
That
it
sounds
might
good.
be. Yeah, it does. And those are perfectly okay for when and those are perfect solutions for when you know you're just kind of approaching crisis. When you get
So,
down into starting to spiral, then you need to be a little more serious. Does that
okay.
make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So for me, sleep is definitely something that I like. Oh, I know a good example.
Uh-huh.
So when I start to get a scratchy throat or like I start to feel like my glands are swollen a little bit, I immediately know that's an identifier
Right.
that I am burning the candle at both ends. I'm working too many hours. I need to shut it down and give myself permission to take a nap.
Right. Because that means your stress levels are going up. And when your stress levels
Yeah.
go up, your vulnerability to PTSD is exponentially more.
Okay.
It's
That makes
almost
sense.
it's almost like your defense system, your defense mechanism,
Uh-huh.
your defenses get lower the more stressed that you are. So
Okay.
when you decrease your stress, then your defenses can come up because that fight or flight response, that PTSD, is a primal. It's a very primitive response. But the higher that we get in our stress level, the easier it is for us to use our primitive responses. And
Okay.
so when we decrease our stress, then we raise up our defenses.
That makes sense.
Does that
Okay.
make sense? Okay.
So we're on the worksheet if you're just
Yeah.
tuning in to this
Let me go
podcast.
back to that.
or if you're watching this on YouTube, we just wrapped up stage 1 of your crisis management plan down at the bottom of the download, which you can get at nomoreshameproject.com/downloadables. And it says crisis management plan 1 page. So we are moving down to stage 2 now, which is
Yep.
spiraling downward. The first stage of a crisis management plan is approaching crisis.
Right.
And we identified triggers, we identified identifiers, and we identified different solutions for stage 1 of a crisis management plan for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, which is the podcast or the video that you have tuned into. So we're moving down to stage 2 on the worksheet,
Right.
spiraling downward. So let's talk about what some triggers are, Bobby. What are some triggers of spiraling downward? Like when you know, uh-oh, I bypassed stage 1,
Right.
I'm actually, okay, I'm getting closer to a crisis.
Yep. Exactly. And the analogy that I usually use with my clients is a slope. So I usually talk about a snow-covered slope is because we tend to be able to envision a snowball going down there and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets to the bottom. So when you're
Yeah.
approaching a crisis, you're on the top of the hill and you're looking down. When you're
Okay.
spiraling downward, now you're starting to slide and you're sliding down, and every foot that you slide, you're gaining more snow.
Oh boy.
And so a lot of times people don't know when we're approaching a crisis because it's not very easy to see from outside of us. We can feel
Okay.
it inside of us. Now, thankfully, your husband has become a little more in tune to what goes on with you, and he knew that.
I'm blown away. I'm blown away right now. I'm like, whoa, oh my gosh, because we've come so far.
Exactly.
I mean, I was not always like that. He would just be kind of like any other man that's listening in right now that is not, what did Brenda call it that one time? Trauma informed.
Yes.
Love that. Brenda's a genius. So not everyone is trauma informed. And so usually my husband would make that face that most guys are making right now if they're listening to this and they're not trauma informed, like, what is your deal? Like,
right.
I just asked you about what salad dressing to put on my salad for lunch. You're
That's
making a smoothie. It's 8:30 in the morning. So, but like you said, you know what? It is never too late, you guys. It is never, ever, ever too late. If your family members are not safe people and they are not trauma informed and they don't know how to help you in that moment, it doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. Because it wasn't too long ago that my husband would go, what? What's
Why are
the
you
deal?
freaking out over salad?
It's salad. I asked about the Bob's blue cheese dressing, something like that. So, okay. So, stage 2, we're spiraling downward.
Right, exactly.
We've crossed over the top of the hill.
Exactly. And now we're sliding down.
Yeah.
And on the one sheet, the one page that we've given you, it says spiraling downward is the stage where we're experiencing a noticeable increase in our symptoms and a decrease in our ability to perform our daily tasks. So now, going to work and working 8 hours a day is really hard. It's starting to get really hard. Your anxiety level is constantly up. Your mood is down. You might be short-tempered with your children, with your family, with your spouse. You're just having a hard time coping. And this is where now it's pretty noticeable now to coworkers, family, and friends that you're having a hard time and you're not coping really well.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the spiraling downward piece.
And that's a trigger or that's an identifier?
That's just a description of the stage.
Okay.
So a trigger perhaps for spiraling downward when you know you have moved from approaching crisis to sliding down the hill. Like for me, a trigger for me would be when I try to reach out for support and they get rejected. And so the people that I asked to help me when I was approaching crisis, they've rejected me. So now I feel even worse, and now I have slipped over the ledge and I'm going down. It might
Okay.
be that I didn't get that extra sleep that I needed.
Mm.
It might be that because I was in crisis, approaching crisis, I was late on a project at work. My boss isn't happy. That would be a trigger. That would be something that would push me over that edge. And now I'm hanging on for dear life just to perform my tasks of daily living.
Hey, I have a question, Bobby.
Sure, hit me.
So, can a phone call be a trigger of a
Absolutely.
stage two spiral down?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because
You
it's
know,
like one more thing that's happening at that moment. Like you're
exactly.
unable to do normal things.
Right.
And I guess part two of my question is it possible for people that are struggling with either post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is it possible for people to literally survive day to day in one of these stages and almost in a perpetual state of crisis?
Absolutely.
Because I
Um,
feel like previously, like when I was like really just starting off in my recovery from just having memories of my sexual abuse as a child and of my physical abuse and of the verbal abuse, just over and over and over, I would have all these memories. But I felt like if one little thing interrupted my day, like if I
yeah,
were to get like a phone call or something that wasn't planned in my day, I felt like it would just sort of throw me off and I would feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to function right now?
right,
You know?
exactly. There are
So,
times in your recovery where you don't move, you never move into stage one. You're sitting perpetually in stage two. You spend
wow.
every day. I'm so analogy driven, so I'm going to hang
I
on to
like
this
it.
one.
I like
It's
it.
like you're on that ski slope, you're sliding down, and you're hanging on. You've got your pickaxe, your ice pickaxe driven into the snow, and that's the way you live every day. And you only have one free hand because you're hanging on like dear life with the other one. And so you have one free hand to do as much as you can. And obviously, you're not doing as much as you could if you had both free hands. So you're not functioning at, top level. And
Yeah.
absolutely, and
Okay.
that phone call might come, your pickaxe might slide out, and you slide down 15 feet until you get your pickaxe
Yeesh.
back in.
I
And
feel like
then
I've been there.
absolutely, you have. And, like I talked about, the trauma response model that we put together, one of the stages of response to trauma is chaos, where we feel like
Yeah.
we live in a perpetual state of chaos.
Yeah.
And that is definitely a time when you are existing in stage two 24/7, except for the times when you slip into stage three.
Okay. Stage three. Okay, so spiraling downward is encroaching over the top of that mountain. You're starting to slide down.
Right.
Triggers to that could be a phone call or or even smells, right? We talked about smells yesterday in chat.
We did
We had a
yesterday.
lot of people in our sex abuse chat, which is, by the way, every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific. That was started by Rachel Thompson and Bobby Parrish, and that is for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And you can just follow the hashtag on Twitter, Sex Abuse Chat. And we had lots of people yesterday that were chatting about triggers in crisis, and a lot of them were smells.
Yes. Um,
Yeah.
Perhaps it's a cologne that your abuser used to wear.
Or like one of our friends, it's a smell of whiskey,
Right, right,
very specific to her abuse. Her
right.
sexual abuse as a child, there was always the smell of whiskey. And so if she smells that, it is, would you consider that a stage two, a spiraling down, Bobby?
It depends on where she would be when that started. If she was already approaching crisis, then that could definitely trigger her into a
Okay,
downward spiral.
okay.
Um, and somebody else talked about too the smell of cigarettes
Yes, that was
because
me.
they're
That
that
was
was you okay
me.
because
A
because your abuser
specific
was a
cigarette.
smoker. Hmm.
Yeah, well, my second abuser was a smoker,
Okay.
Marlboro Lights. I can smell other cigarettes. Like I had so many family members that I had such a contingency of smokers in my family. Like
Yeah.
seriously, a
Me
lot of them
too.
have
Me
black
too.
lungs, and I have people that have passed away from lung cancer. But my second abuser smoked Marlboro Lights, so I could literally be smelling whatever different kind of tobacco, and if someone walks by and they're smoking Marlboro Lights, it just triggers me so bad. I'm immediately nauseous. I have to step away or find a place where I can be by myself because I have to
Yeah.
like I literally start to almost hyperventilate
Right.
because of the smell that I remember as a child of Marlboro Lights. Whenever I would smell Marlboro Lights as a child, it was always a bad situation. Always, 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 always. So so that is an identifier or a
That's
trigger.
that's a trigger.
Okay,
That's a trigger. The identifier would be the panic attack itself, the
got it.
hyperventilation. That tells you, oops, bad spot, gotta get out of it.
Ooh, and the solution would be what I said. I found a safe place to be by
Exactly.
myself. Got
Exactly.
it. I'm on
Um,
this.
we definitely need to do a Google Hangout about how to ground yourself when you're feeling panicked or triggered.
Yeah, with
Um,
like touching your hands or touching
right.
something rough or something
Something
cold or
tactile. Right.
something tactile, grounding
Um,
yourself, feeling the wind on your hair, your face, something that will take you out of your head and get you into your body.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so stage three is what I call full-blown crisis.
Okay.
And if you go back up on the page a little bit, you'll see a description, and it says
Mm-hmm.
full-blown crisis is a stage where our mood is so low and our symptoms are so strong that we're not functioning or coping. We might begin to engage in destructive behaviors like drinking or self-harming, and we might also be suicidal. So this is the
Okay.
point where you are just, you know, you're done. You're not going to work. You are, or if you are, you're barely eking out any productivity. Maybe you're drinking to excess. You're doing drugs. Maybe you're engaged in a pornography addiction. Whatever it is that helps you to self-medicate in that time, you are doing it because you're feeling so badly.
I know a
Um,
couple of others that have been mentioned to me by some clients of
okay,
mine. Um, and people don't even realize that these are coping mechanisms. They have just written them off as just some sort of bad habit that just is just something that they've decided to do.
right.
But a couple that are pretty not so often talked about, video game addiction.
Yep,
That's
sure,
escapism. You're trying to escape to another land or another world or another something so that
right.
you can cope. Spending,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
so fondly called as retail
Retail
therapy,
therapy.
right? But I mean, even going online and just sort of clicking and buying, and
Yeah.
those are things that could be coping mechanisms
Hmm.
for escaping, that you're trying to escape the feeling that you are when you're approaching crisis, or
Right.
you're not even approaching crisis. I think that's even farther down.
Yeah, that would be you're starting to get into your downward spiral because you're
Yeah,
self-medicating. That's exactly what you're doing. You're trying to make
yeah.
yourself feel better. Um,
And pornography addiction and video game addiction and spending, being addicted to spending,
right.
is is they're all just as destructive as the other. They're just not all illegal. I
That's
mean,
true.
some people love to take heroin because it makes them feel better. That happens to not be something that is legal. But another person might want to log on and go on a shopping spree to make them feel better, and that's their fix. And that happens to be legal and encouraged, and it's socially acceptable. But it's all the same, and you could obviously be in a stage 3 full-blown crisis if you are participating in any type of overspending, or like Bobby said, over drinking or taking drugs, whether they be prescription, over the counter, what have you. All of these are examples of if you are possibly in a full blown crisis. So, what are some triggers for full-blown crisis, Bobby?
Those are usually the big ones. Your abuser dies, your abuser contacts you, um, you are viciously betrayed by a friend or a spouse or a partner,
Mm,
a child dies, one of your children dies, um, the big things. You're in a horrible accident. Your husband's in a horrible accident. Big traumas that cause that high level of stress, which means our coping mechanisms are way down here, and we have to resort to those primal ones that fight or flight, or for PTSD people, sometimes it's freeze. So flight,
mm.
right? Flight, fight, or freeze. There we go, too many F's. Um,
Yeah,
and the stage 3 always, always is a reach out stage. And it's important that you reach out to your therapist, people who are safe, because at this point, your life may be on the line and you need to reach out for help. And this is the time when, for most people, like if you were to put together a crisis management plan, Athena, I think that because your husband is a safe person, you would want to go over this with him, because maybe he'll see that you are in full-blown crisis when you either don't want to see it for yourself or you don't see it. And so it's important that you have the names and phone numbers of, this is my therapist's name, this is their phone number. When I get to full-blown crisis, I need to call this person, or you need to call this person. Or
yeah,
I need to tell, it's okay to say, you know what, I can't make the phone call. Can you call and let her know that I'm
yeah,
having a hard time and I need to get in to see her, or I need to talk to her on the phone. Um,
yeah.
you need to contact the RAIN crisis line. You need to contact the suicide prevention crisis line. Whatever you need to do, that's the time to reach out and stop before your life is at stake.
And that brings me to, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're sometimes if you're in that full-blown crisis, you don't know how to reach out. So
Right?
those are some identifiers, right?
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
the solutions are now, am I to understand? I just want to make sure that I understand. So the solution on stage 3 of the crisis management plan is um, that always reach out. That's
Oh,
it. Reach out.
no, not that's it, but that's always has to be part of the solution. There can
Okay.
be other things, but that one, it has to be there. But other ones might be take a leave of absence from work, take a vacation, um, go spend a couple of days with a good friend. Whatever you can do to reduce your stress and put yourself in a safe place.
Okay.
All of those things, whatever works for you, but reaching out for help must be one of the solutions when you're talking about stage 3. Even if it's just to say, you know what, I just want to let you know, because when we have a client that's in that bad place, we want to know.
Yep.
Even if they say, you know what, I'm managing it okay, I just want to give you a heads up. I'm in a really bad place. And
Yeah.
that way we can be aware that in case the crisis really does hit, we know what's going on, and we're not letting things slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
So even if it's just to let your therapist know or your coach know, you know, bad time here, or even if you want to put on stage 2, one of your solutions is to give your therapist or coach a heads up.
Like to give us, so just to give us a heads up that you're feeling that you're in a downward spiral. You're
Absolutely.
feeling like you've already approached crisis. I know that I have clients that, they have gotten to a place where they don't even really know that that's what's going on at the moment, but
Right.
they can tell something's not right,
Right.
you
Exactly.
know?
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
well, this is
Um,
great. I feel like we covered a lot of ground.
we did, and let me put up our connect with us information in case
Yeah.
people want to reach out. Let me know when you can see it.
Okay. Oh,
Is
I
it
can
there?
see it.
Okay, here
Yeah,
we go.
I can see it.
So that's how to reach out to us. Our Twitter accounts, both individually and for the No More Shame Project, There are our email contacts, our Facebook page. Ann Athena and I both have individual Facebook pages. We would love to connect with you personally. And there's our websites. So if you want to connect with us, that is the way to do it. So let me
Yeah.
see. Now it should be switching over to weekly activities.
Nope, it didn't switch yet. Maybe it'll switch in a moment.
Okay, let's see here. Boy, technical stuff tonight.
I know. The software for the Google Hangout did not behave the same way that it normally does. Like, for instance, I think I was co-hosting with you last week. Um, this week, I am just down in the bottom right-hand corner for all the participants. I'm just down in the bottom right-hand corner. I have no idea how. I'm not privy to any of the information like I normally am. I don't know how many viewers we have. I'm not able to make screenshots so I can make a fancy banner. Nothing.
Okay.
I'm visiting.
Oh, I'm so glad you're visiting.
I like visiting. I want to co-host again though because,
Yeah.
that's what we should do. Okay, Twitter chat, Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Use the hashtag sex abuse chat.
Yeah.
If you are listening in on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud, you can log on to Twitter anytime when you're not driving and just type in hashtag sex abuse chat and you'll see our feed from our weekly chats, which were started by our very dear friend and best-selling author, Rachel Thompson. And again, they're every Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And then the topic that we discuss on Tuesdays, whatever topic that might be, that carries over to Wednesdays. And that is our weekly live Google Hangouts on air. Same topic as Tuesday night. And we do have a Q&A here on Google where you can ask questions. Bobby, I still think I'm going to be super techie fancy and I'm going to have like, I'm going to do what John Lee Dumas does on his webinars and maybe have like the Google Hangout on our website with like the chat role underneath or even like a Twitter feed underneath and we can just use a hashtag for just so that everybody can participate. Because, I had my phone on silent, but I had lots of our friends. I know that we had lots of our friends from Tuesday nights that were tweeting while we're doing this Google Hangout, and I didn't participate in any of their tweets or respond to any of their tweets, but they are here. And if it would have been so much more fun if while we're sitting here talking, Bobby, and we're hosting this hangout and providing this value, and for those of you that are listening in on Stitcher and iTunes and SoundCloud, you could go back and you could read those show notes, or you could find them on Twitter by searching our hashtag. But I have 30 tweets from people who are watching this Google Hangout.
Wow.
They're talking about my windows, and and then you know what? Oh, thank you so much. They were Jack Lumen is he was tweeting out our new link for our new Google Hangout since our event link wasn't working properly. So you guys are so awesome. I love our community so much. The Survivor community, by the way, is the most supportive, amazing community I've ever been a part of.
Absolutely.
Ever. They're just supportive and amazing. So
they are. And we have private support groups on Facebook. If you would like to be a part of those, reach out to us on Twitter or email. If you follow us on Twitter, that is fantastic because we put a lot of our information out on there. Or go ahead and give a like to the No More Shame page. We put a lot of information out on there.
Tweet it out. Share it.
We're going to start to have webinars and conferences, retreats. We'll be publishing our first anthology from survivors on the 17th of November. A lot of good stuff coming out, so do follow us.
We're gonna have a pre-order page for people who want to pre-order that book and pay for it, and we will post that information on Twitter and on our website as soon as we have a pre-order for all the people. We haven't even announced the authors yet. We haven't
No,
even announced which authors have been accepted into the
that's right.
anthology that will be published November 17th, 2014.
Yep.
But what I do know is that I will be making my very first trip to the East Coast on at the end of May of 2015, and I'm going to be traveling the East Coast and doing speaking engagements. I already have 2 confirmed, and that's in the month of June. And we're going to be talking about the anthology and how to support survivors of adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And we have tons of resources. We have
Yep.
VIP days, we have one-on-one coaching, we have group coaching. We have so much, and it's so exciting, and it's all just happening right now. This is so cool. I'm excited.
And just for your information, next week our Twitter chat and Google Hangout are going to be about relationships with your family of origin, which can be such a loaded situation because often our family of origin with which a lot of our abuse took place. And not just sexual abuse, but emotional abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, a lot of that. It's, as Athena has pointed out before, it's seldom a situation where someone is only sexually abused. There's
Yeah,
very often verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, or
yeah.
neglect involved in there somewhere.
And we're gonna need to have more Google Hangouts on that topic, and because I think what a difficult thing for a lot of survivors to grasp is that the abuse wasn't about them. My abuse wasn't about me. It was about control, and it was about someone else. And it
Yep.
was about someone else caring more about themselves
And
than
their needs.
me.
And right.
And so that type of need for control or that neglect or that self-centeredness is not about the person they're abusing. It's about control, and it's about, their chances are they're in the middle of a crisis and they're coping from something. And this is how I mean, they chose to abuse another human being sexually, and rarely is it just sexually because it's about control. So
Right.
you can control someone verbally by verbally abusing them, emotionally by withholding your love from them, which
Yeah.
damages people so much if they don't comply with what you want and you withhold your love from them, or even just neglect, even just absenteeism.
Yep.
So all these different types of abuse, which often happen in your family of origin, we're going to be talking about those next week. Super loaded topic,
Yep.
very controversial. Going to have some haters. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And then the week after that, we're going to follow up with what happens when your abuser dies. So we've got some
Yeah,
heavy stuff coming up. And again, this is all information that we're trying to provide to you so that you, one, know you're not alone in what you're dealing with, and two, you
yeah,
can get some information in order to be more empowered in your recovery. So,
yeah. We are here for you. We are not here for
absolutely.
ourselves. We want to be a safe place. We want to be a support system um, for you guys. Oh, I just got a tweet from our awesome, amazing friend Joe, who is a social media and internet guru person. And she wanted me to remind you guys that are listening in on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or watching on YouTube that we have a No More Shame board on Pinterest.
Right.
And we'll tweet out that link if you want to go to our Twitter, or maybe we can put it in the show notes, the link to the No More Shame board so that you can repin our pins.
There you go.
And on our website, nomoreshameproject.com, we have a new tab, and it is called Pinnables. And if you hover your mouse over the button that says downloadables, there will be a little drop down and it will say Pinnables. And if you click on that, you will find Pinnables. So right now there's only one, and it's a Brene Brown quote because Brene Brown is awesome.
Yes, she is.
And but we're gonna have more, and we're just so excited that you're here. We want to be a support to you,
Absolutely.
and this is just my greatest joy. I just come alive because I know that there is someone right now that is going to be watching this at 3 in the morning because they can't sleep and they feel all alone, and they're going to be laughing out loud with us because we're being goofy because we're not even sure if the software on Google is working right now. So I'm hoping it's working. I think it says live up in the corner.
It does. It does say
I'm
live.
small. I'm down here though. I'm not like I'm not doing what I did yesterday. I don't know what's happening, but I'm hoping that it's working.
Yes, and that will behave better for us next week. We do have viewers, so I know people have found this.
How many viewers do we have, Bobby?
Well, right now we have two because we're over
Oh,
time.
it's because we went long.
We
We'll
did.
stay on track next time, guys. It's going to be great. Thank you for tuning in if you're listening on a podcast. And thank you for watching if you're watching us on YouTube. And we just love you guys. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
yeah. Click on over to our website, sign up for our email list. We send out lots of good stuff and let you know about what's coming up. So don't forget to let us know where you are so we can find you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Good
Thanks
night,
so much,
everybody.
everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.